Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta, Tuesday morning, September the 21st, and I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And the chat room is open if anybody would like to sit in there and is awake and everything. I popped a link in there. I wanted to move on from the inner child. I figured we've been looking at that for weeks now, so I thought I'd switch over to something else that I really wanted to look at. And have been sort of waiting to take a good look at this one for quite a while now. Went back when I did quite a few shows not too long ago about shame and the whole issues that surround shame with adult survivors of child abuse and children who are being abused, right? And it was mainly material from John Bradshaw. But then I was searching around and I found some other information out there about the shame-rage connection and anger management and stuff like that. So I wanted to take a look at that, and that's what we'll start with today. And I popped the link in the chat, and this is some good information, especially for people who have dealt with a lot of anger management issues and the whole rage thing and shame and rage, right? So I'm going to find this very helpful. I know myself this will really be good for me to look at. So I hope it's helpful for you as well. So I'm not a professional counselor or anything like that, or I don't hold any certificates in counseling or therapy. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows. I'm a survivor of child abuse, and I just wanted to be one more voice, really, with all the other voices out there, to let people know they're not alone and that there is help out there. And just by looking around, there is so much help out there. And to make sure that, to let people know to reach out, and not suffer alone in silence and shame, right? Because that's just sad, and I did that for a long time. And so, I just wanted to be one more voice, so I'm not a professional. You have to listen at your own discretion. All the topics that I talk about all deal with the issues of child abuse mainly, but, domestic violence, sexual assault, human rights abuses, really. And so you have to listen at your own discretion. The topics are sensitive. A lot of people find it very sensitive to listen to this stuff, to even think about it, so make sure you're in a safe enough place to listen to this. And, if you're a young person under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows, because there's a lot of adult content on my shows, but ultimately it is about stopping child abuse. But the thing is I'm all about protecting children. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and, we're working to try to stop and prevent child abuse and trying to save children's lives. So, you have to be very careful what you're doing online, and you should have an adult listen to shows like this that you're going to listen to make sure it's something that you should be listening to, and also they can help you with if you have questions and whatnot. So hopefully you have an adult person like a parent or a caregiver or a teacher, coach, somebody at school who you trust and who's trustworthy and can help you make a decision on whether you should be listening to this show or not. I'd appreciate that. So we'll get right into this article here. It's just it's a website, www.angerresources.com/shamerage.htm. So that's www.angeresources.com. And there's just one R in there. Anger Resources. So this is called the Shame-Rage Connection, from feeling defective and inadequate to becoming disrespectful and explosive. And it was put out by Dave Decker, M.A. And I went and I looked to see who Dave Decker is. And Dave Decker is a licensed psychologist, and he's currently in private practice in St. Paul, Minnesota, where he provides domestic abuse and general mental health services for his clients. His areas of expertise include domestic abuse, anger, regulation, men's issues, depression, anxiety, stress management, shame and family of origin issues, and EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And some of the articles on this website are actually written by Mike Obsatz. And Mike Obsatz, his Dr. Michael Obsatz, received an honorary degree from Macalester College, St. Paul, Minnesota, in commencement on May 12, 2007, in honor of his retirement after 40 years of service to the college. His courses have included Institution of the Family, Human Sexuality, Male Socialization Issues and Violence, and death and dying. So Dr. Obsatz earned his BA in psychology from Brandeis University in Waltham, Massachusetts, and his MA and PhD in educational psychology from the University of Chicago. So this website put together by these two men who are, licensed. One's a licensed psychologist, and the other one is he earned a BA in psychology. So, this looks, it's pretty interesting, the stuff that he's got on here. There's counseling, seminars, tools and resources, books, videos, self-tests, and links and whatnot. Both of them talk about the issues of anger, so that's why it's called Anger Resources, your key to empowerment. So I think this is good for a lot of people. You don't even have to have been abused to get something out of this. There's so many people that have anger management issues. And I mean, you look around the world today, just about everybody's got anger management issues, as far as in the workplace, people exploding, blowing up on somebody and just screaming and yelling at them and becoming violent. I mean, I've seen this and I've actually done it. I've been on both sides of the whole thing. People in the cars with the road rage, they do have lots of articles on here about road rage, which I used to be a road rager, and then I learned to calm down on the road. So I stopped that after a while. But the thing is that just about anybody could relate to this stuff, because anger, can be managed. It can be, dealt with properly, right? And this is something that I find very interesting, because the whole issues that surround child abuse, a lot of child abuse, a lot of parents have no anger management, so they just lash out at their children in anger, and of course that's when the abuse really starts to take place, is when these parents don't stop to think about what they're doing and they lash out at their children, or whether it's the caregivers, a relative, daycare personnel, whoever is looking after these children. They obviously need help in this area, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. There's a lot of stuff behind it. There's whole reasons, and there's issues going on behind the scenes, and that's why the anger is there. So there's a whole lot of people that need this information, and I sure hope that eventually they'll stumble upon it like I did. It's quite interesting, really. So I want to take a look at the shame-rage connection, and it's quite a lengthy article, but we'll just get started on it and see how long it takes us to get through this. We might not be able to finish it today. But it says the shame-rage connection from feeling defective and inadequate to becoming disrespectful and explosive. So it says many people believe that explosive and volatile anger is a sign of power, confidence, and being on top of your game. In fact, this is not the case at all. Rage and disrespectful anger actually come out of a deep sense of powerlessness, inadequacy, and despair. Another word for that place is shame. So shame is a significant part of all emotional distress in life, and shame can lead to a whole host of compulsive, addictive, irresponsible, and demoralizing attitudes and behaviors, and is a major contributor to all sorts of emotional and physical distress that human beings experience. So one primary indicator that shame is present in many people's lives is explosive anger that leads to destructive and self-defeating attitudes or abusive actions towards themselves or others. And it says when people basically feel okay about themselves, they do not feel a need to hurt and demean themselves or those around them. So think back, it says here, think back for a moment to your time as a child. For some, childhood memories involve chatter and fun at the family dinner table, sitting with your parents as they read stories to you, having teachers show an interest in who you were and what you did, and playing happily in your backyard with other neighborhood kids. For others, however, the memories are not nearly so rosy. You may remember punishing and demeaning lectures directed at you by a parent or teacher whenever you made a mistake. You might remember hostile and abusive scenes whenever your parents fought. You may also recall being picked on and ridiculed by other children inside and outside school. So these kinds of experiences can lead to an almost constant state of anxiety, self-doubt, and insecurity. He goes on to say, this second set of memories is what sets the stage for the development of shame within you. Once the shame is there, some people end up converting this shame into rage directed at themselves and others. So that's my case, right? I mean, I was raging inside, as a child, and then it just started to become external rage, other people, and basically just raging at life, as a young person, a young teen. And then in my 20s even, I was still raging, and I'd get thrown out of airports, and I'd get thrown out of different places because my rage would just come out, and people would just see me as a threat, and I'd be removed by security. And I had to learn how to stop doing that and how to control myself, but I sort of did that on my own because I just started to learn to calm down and relax, right? But the thing is I wish I would have had enough brains to search out this information in the first place, instead of 20 odd years later. So it says, what you heard, saw, and experienced as a child shapes the way you look at yourself and your life today. The reality is that people learn to be hostile, cynical, disrespectful, and abusive. They learn, as learned behaviors. It says, and these attitudes and behaviors come directly from shame and feelings of defectiveness and inadequacy that were often first instilled when you were young. When you think about it, your experience as a child is very much like being in a laboratory where you discover what it is to be human. And this is where you learn who you are, how to relate to others, and how you fit into the world. So it says, if you grew up in a hurtful, disrespectful, or neglectful family, or you were the target of hostile and abusive treatment by peers or other adults, you received some very distorted and perverted messages about the way life is and the way life can be. Shame is the end result of these messages and can quickly lead to acting out your anger in some hurtful and unproductive ways. So it says here, when shame becomes a part of you and you end up experiencing a gnawing sense that something is vaguely and indescribably wrong with you, with who you are and the way you are living your life. So shame leads to doubts about yourself at your very core and to the idea that you are somehow flawed and do not quite measure up to your own or others' expectations. These beliefs lead to a tendency to harshly judge yourself and others for mistakes and shortcomings. These judgments can also lead to feeling angry and even rageful at times. You may have learned to face each day with a sense of fear and dread, which has gotten in the way of handling life's challenges. You may have learned that other people cannot be trusted and that you need to be constantly on guard so that others do not hurt or take advantage of you. Needless to say, this sets up the stage for you to feel hostile and angry much of the time and gets in the way of developing close relationships with others. And so I can totally relate to this stuff because, that's how I felt like, especially growing up in the home that I grew up in, there was a lot of just so much violence, so much hatred and violence. And so I just felt like I had to be on guard all the time and had to be, I really just figured somebody was going to get hurt, and, I certainly didn't want it to be me. So I sort of developed an attitude, almost like a self-protective attitude that, I was not going to allow them to take me down, you know what I mean? And I was going to be the one to push back. And so when I got older and became more physically strong, that sort of came out in my actions, especially with my friends and other people, my peers at school and whatnot, because I was quite often the bully. Like I wasn't necessarily pushing other kids around just, because they were, calling them names or anything. But what it was if somebody got in my face and said something to me, I would quite often push them down, or if somebody did something I didn't like, my rage and anger would come out on them, like, I beat a couple of people up one time, a guy, and this is the thing. It's terrible what happens to children because they feel like they have to protect themselves, and if you grow up like that, you're just constantly on edge, And it says here you've learned to face each day with a sense of fear and dread, and so that's basically how I felt as a child, and I can totally see how this sort of happens. Right? It's almost like it's like a learned behavior, but it's also a protective measure for many people, I think. It says you may have tried a myriad of strategies to medicate the pain that you sense in there, drinking or eating too much, spending or gambling compulsively, or working all the time with little energy left for yourself and your family. Or you may have tried to confront and address people and problems around you with explosive and disrespectful anger. It says none of these is actually effective in removing the pain that shame creates. Saddest of all, it may seem like there's no way out of this vision you have of the world. It says, but there is an alternative, right? So that's the whole issue, right? I mean, we go for years, sometimes, survivors of any kind of abuse, right? Your self-esteem and sense of worth is so low, and your view of life is just so bad. I mean, I know because I've been there. And something always inside of me was always just saying, no, there's good stuff in life. There's good people. I had met good people in my lifetime, and I knew there was good people out there. But it's the fact that I had grown up with a bunch of people who were struggling, and it was a very abusive environment. So I had two different visions of the world, and one was with me in it, and then the other one was maybe a few other people. So the bigger part of my world was a dark place, you know what I mean? And I knew there was good stuff out there, and I had done some really cool stuff as a young adult and into my 20s, and experienced some really cool things. But in the meantime, in the back of my mind, I knew where I came from. I knew how I had grown up, and all this stuff was just kind of always eating at me. And so my view of the world was, and my life was just actually not that good. And so I was always contemplating ending my life, or just trying to get out of the pain, right? Self-injuring and things like this. And before that, it was just a lot of drug use, right? But then after I stopped doing drugs, it had to come out somehow. And so it just, these sort of self-destructive behaviors was always to where I didn't want to start doing drugs again. So I said, well, how can I get out of this pain and escape this, And a lot of people have been there. I know so many people have been there, and it's a hard place to be. But he says there is an alternative. And the first step in moving beyond your shame is to understand what shame is and how it affects your day-to-day life. If you don't understand what shame is, there is no way to begin to change it. And so I started to realize this. This is where I'm adding this in here, because I know about 4 years ago when I started on my healing journey, this is where the point where my healing began was when I actually sat down and I thought, man, I did not deserve that. I did not deserve that treatment. I don't care what anybody says, and I don't care what my family, the leftover dysfunctional members that are left in it, say. Their opinions matter not to me. I did not deserve that abuse that was put on me, and neither did anybody in my family, but sadly enough, my parents made a lot of bad choices. So, I thought, well, I need to fight to live, and as soon as I started to do that and started to self-nurture, and started to think, hey, that shame didn't belong to me, but I looked at it, I didn't look at it as shame. I just looked at it like this necklace of this abuse and garbage that my parents had put around my neck, I thought, man, I've been carrying around this necklace full of abuse and garbage and, every bad thing around my neck. And I said, wearing it, and I thought, that's not my necklace. It does not even belong to me. That was not mine. So I took it off in my mind, and I visually and mentally threw it away. And I said, that's just garbage. I do not have to carry that around. I do not have to suffer for the rest of my life. I was made to suffer as a child, and as children, we don't have a choice, right? I mean, you just have to go along with whatever people are doing. I mean, sadly enough, and when you get older and realize that you can make a phone call and get some help, by that time it might be too late, which it was in my case, because the damage was done psychologically and mentally and emotionally, right? But, some kids, are smart enough to, if the abuse starts later in life and step-parent or someone in the family starts abusing them later in life, they might actually have the brains to make a phone call or tell another adult or get some help, right? Whereas, for me, it was I just believed that this was my life and this is the way it was going to go because it's the way it had always gone, right? So then I started to, it took me to the age of 41 to figure it out that I really needed to work on healing and that I needed to allow myself to heal and not spend the rest of my life in this dysfunctional state of depression and gloom and doom and sadness. Because, I like to have fun, and I've always been able to sort of, just enjoy my life at times when things are going good. But then I'd go home and sit on the couch at night, and all those memories would flood back, all the flashbacks, all the memories, would come back. So I was the same person. It's just I was able to enjoy myself periods of time, right? So the pain would never really go away. It would just come back. So that's why we have to learn, to change this. He says, but you can't change it without knowing what it is, right? And so we did, not too long ago, we looked at a whole bunch of information on shame, right? And with John Bradshaw, Healing the Shame That Binds You. I haven't read that book, but he has his websites there. And that is some really good information. We spent weeks on it, but you can go, just type into your browser, John Bradshaw, Healing the Shame That Binds You. It'll come up, and you'll be able to see his website. And he's got some great information about shame, the whole, what is shame, what is toxic shame, right? And so this gentleman here is actually explaining this as well too, and he says everyone experiences some shame just through the process of growing up. Being smaller, less skilled, and not knowing as much as your parents, older siblings, and others creates a sense of shame. He says you're not as effective and knowledgeable as some of the people around you. In a nurturing, loving, and safe environment, however, this helps you develop a realistic appraisal of yourself, that you are not perfect and you do not know everything. This realization leads ideally to a sense of humility. Says, but that is not what I'm addressing here. He says, rather, what I'm talking about is toxic shame, and that's what John Bradshaw was talking about as well. So he's going to talk about some of this here too, And he says, toxic shame, which is an overwhelming belief and feeling that you are never quite good enough. This belief for many people creates enormous tension and the anger and rage that can go along with it. So he says, when you experience and internalize others' shaming, punishing, and demeaning messages, toxic shame is created. It becomes your way of looking at yourself and other people and the world around you. It also becomes a way of actually living your life that has as its foundation control, perfectionism, blame, reactivity, cynicism, despair, and stagnation. Shame is often initially created when you were hurt and wounded by people who were important to you in some way. It says these wounds might have been created by your parents if they were abusive and neglectful. They could have been created by your siblings or other children if you were demeaned and put down by them. They might have been created by teachers or coaches if you were humiliated in school or disciplined in a punishing way. Or they could have been created by others, even perfect strangers, who treated you disrespectfully and acted as if you were insignificant and had no worth. And so think back to things that were said to you. Do any of these examples below sound familiar? And he lists these off, and these are really, these are sad, but most of us probably can relate to this. He lists them off. He says, hey, fat boy, how can you be so stupid is another one. You never could do anything right, that's another one. If you think it's so bad here, wait till you get out into the real world. You're a damn loser and you'll never amount to anything, there's another one. You've ruined my life, that's another one. Nobody could ever care about you, anyone like you, and that's another one. And if it weren't for you, I'd be somebody. And also, I wish you'd never been born, see. And, this is things that people tell, their children, or other people tell children. It's absolutely horrible that people take their garbage out on children, but they do, and it leaves these horrific canyon-sized wounds that, and they think at the time they're not thinking about that. They're just lashing out, for whatever reason, because they have their own problems, right? And that's really sad. So, I can relate to all of that stuff there, and most of us have probably heard some of that. So these are the kinds of statements that destroy self-esteem and self-respect and set the stage for shame to overwhelm your sense of self. And when people around you took out their life's pain on you by saying things like this, or treated you like an object rather than a person with human dignity, for instance, pushing or hitting you, cuffing or hitting you, you were affected. It says you may have even noticed at the time, but you might not have wanted to admit it to yourself or anyone else. Or you might not have been clear about its effect on might not have been clear about its effect on you, or you might have simply struggled on doing the best you could under the circumstances. So it says when you were treated in a punishing and harmful way or hurtful way, or simply neglected and ignored, you may have taken these messages in and begun to believe that they were an accurate representation of who you really were. These distortions and lies become your vision for how you looked at yourself and how you related to the world around you. They became the roles that you look on and played in your life over the years to the present. So it says, that's just the thing, right? When you grow up with this kind of stuff and then you're not getting the support from your caregivers and parents who are really supposed to be there for you to help you kind of get over these types of things and not actually saying them to you, right? No parent should tell their child these things, and if they do, they need to apologize for it and let the child know that had nothing to do with the child and it was just anger and it really didn't, because people make mistakes. There's no perfect child. There's no perfect parent, So if a parent does these things, they need to actually let the child know that this has nothing to do with them and it was just their own problem and that they're sorry and that they really try very hard not to do it again. And then do that, right? But the sad thing is that most parents are, not most, there's good parents out there, I'm sure of it. I don't know. I haven't seen very many, but I know there's got to be some good parents out there. I know it. And the thing is there are parents that actually do care about their children. I mean, I don't know, somewhere on this planet, somewhere, I know there has to be, right? I have hardly ever seen any, but I know just by some of my friends that I have in my life that I can imagine that they do care about their children and they love their children very much. But as you can see, I don't trust the adult parent either, even today as an adult myself, because people are always hurting their children. And even if it's not considered abuse, it's considered discipline, and they're still hurting their children because people will not get help for their issues, and they won't stop and think before they say these harmful words. They won't stop and think before they throw something at their child or burn their child or beat their child. They won't stop and think about what it's going to do to that child. They're just thinking about themselves, right? So that's the sad part. And people just need to get a grip and start thinking about how they're treating people in their lives. It's just not right. So it says, excuse me, essentially what happened in this process is that someone else wrote a life script for you. It says you were told through the ways that you were spoken to and treated who to be and how to live. It says you did not really ever have the opportunity to figure out who you actually were and wanted to be. And you certainly were not allowed to write your own life script. So that's just the whole issue when you're living in a abusive environment, whether it's your parents, caregivers, or bullied at school and whatnot. People are writing your script for you, and so if they're not writing a good script for you, then they're writing a bad script for you. Your parents are supposed to set you up with all this awesome stuff so that to empower you as a child to be able to go on and find out who you are and find out what you want to do in this life and then support you in whatever way they can, instead of tearing you down little piece by little piece or just all at once and killing you, like we see all these parents do out here, murdering their children. But if they don't murder them, then they murder them every day, a little piece here at a time, one little piece, right? That's why I wrote my book. I called it originally, it was a blog, and it was called The Not So Fond Memories Growing Up in an Abusive Home. And then it was published by Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Donna Shear saw it, president of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and we decided upon the title because I had so many titles, A Life of Death or Redemption. And really because it was a life of death, it was just little piece by little piece. My parents were killing us, and every day. So it just hurt that much more every day, that much more every day. It's like waterboard torture that is going to happen every single day. And it's going to destroy your life. You know what I mean? And this is what happens to children out here who are being abused, right? And that's why it's so serious and such a huge issue that we stop child abuse, right? But the sad thing is they wrote my life script for me. My parents did, and it took me till I was 41 to figure out that I could write my own script, that I could write my own life script, and I don't have to go with the one that they started for me. I can tear up that life script and get my own life script. Right? And so it took me to the age of 41, and two of my brothers didn't make it. One of my brothers couldn't figure that out and committed suicide at the age of 33. Another brother couldn't figure that one out, and he died at the age of 43 of a drug overdose. And that's so sad. They could have written their own scripts and told my parents to, buzz off, right? And that's just unfortunate because so many children who have been abused, they grow up to be adult survivors, and then they don't see that, there is another way and stuff. I just really wanted to be one more voice because I've sat on the couch there, at the age of 41, almost 4 years ago, and I said, man, I'm going to fight to live because I'm going to win this fight. My parents are going to lose this fight. I'm winning this fight. I don't care. I'm winning because I did not deserve that. And if I hurt myself or allow myself to continue on in this depressed state of sadness and gloom and just life is horrible, and allow myself to not go and seek after the goals that I wanted to do and the dreams that I had, and allow them to win this fight, I thought, no way. So, you have to find something within yourself that says, I'm not letting them win. I'm winning this fight because I'm going to stay alive, and I'm going to write myself a new life script. So I like what he's written here, this Dave Decker. I think that's awesome. So we get to rewrite our own script. That's awesome, right? So, we've got a minute left. We'll finish this. We'll take another look at this tomorrow, and you can go there and check this out yourself. Read through it. It's really good information. And have a great day, everybody. I'll be back on tonight. Dreamcatchers Talk Radio for an hour. www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers, and it'll just be me tonight on the show. And then tomorrow morning, same time. One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We'll be back here tomorrow morning to finish the rest of this. And so have a great day, everybody. Keep reaching out. Keep looking for that hope and that help where you can find it. A counselor, a therapist, somebody, group support, online group support, which is what I like. It's convenient, and I like the security in groups and numbers, and just meeting different people. Just keep reaching out. There's people out there who can help us, right? We have to be the ones to reach out for it, and we have to become our own best advocate, right? So make sure you do reach out and get some help, and don't suffer in silence, right? It's so sad. It's such a sad place to be. So have a great day, and if you need something, get a hold of me here on Blog Talk Radio or Facebook, and have yourself a good day, and take care. Talk to you again tomorrow.